Hi and welcome back to SSW TV. I'm Adam Stephensen from SSW and I'm here with Dan Toomey from Mexia. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Hey, we've been having a few conversations about Service Fabric and about how it really is helping people get into microservices at a very high level. Can you give me an idea of what Service Fabric is?
Yes, absolutely. Service Fabric is a highly scalable, highly resilient platform for hosting microservices-based applications. And it comes out of the box with a whole lot of features that enable you to orchestrate the deployment of those services across a cluster of servers. And those servers, they can be virtual machines, they could be real physical servers, they can be running either Windows or Linux, and the best thing is they can live anywhere. Those servers could be in your on-prem data center, or they could be hosted in Microsoft Azure, or they could be hosted in any other cloud providers such as AWS or Google Cloud.
Awesome. So that opens up a number of different scenarios, doesn't it? Where I could, if I was looking to go to the cloud, I could start building my microservices solution using Service Fabric on premise.
Absolutely.
And then when I'm ready to the cloud, I could take my cluster and then move my application to the cloud very easily.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, so we've used microservices. I think we dropped it about 5 times in that first section. So for the people who aren't up to date with what microservices are, what's your take on what microservices are?
Sure. Well, microservices are probably like the next evolution beyond the service-oriented architecture that we've sort of been used to. So a microservice is a small contained service that does one function or task. It does it very well. It's self-contained in that it carries its own configuration, and it may even carry its own data with it. But the most important thing is that they are independently implemented, versioned, deployed, and scaled.
Awesome.
So there's tremendous flexibility there. And they talk to each other with lightweight protocols, usually HTTP or TCP, which can include REST, obviously. Yep. And it just gives you the great versatility to build a platform out of these little building blocks.
Awesome. So that's really promising. So Service Fabric is going to make it easier for us to build our microservices architecture. It lets us build it on premise and take it to the cloud. We can go to multiple different cloud vendors. We're not locked into one vendor.
That's right.
And yeah, so there's a number of great things about it. What do you think about? It's obviously not the only way to build a microservices architecture, though.
No.
What do you see as being the advantages of Service Fabric?
I think I kind of look at Service Fabric as being sort of a PaaS solution for DevOps, because if you think about the complexity of taking microservices and deploying them across a cluster. And, the great thing is that you can distribute those, in any number of ways to make the best possible use of the resources in that cluster. But imagine how complicated that could be to say for each microservice, I want so many instances of it. And for ones that have data, maybe I want to partition it this way. And maybe some services want to be deployed on certain kinds of machines in that cluster. Like some might need more memory, some might need more faster disk space, writing. So that can be a real nightmare to do that manually. But Service Fabric can handle all of that for you. So you define your configuration at the service level, and you deploy your application, and Service Fabric takes care of orchestrating that across the cluster for you.
So it's interesting. So because it's, really we're talking about, so what it lets us do is it lets us write a small piece of code, lets us write a service, and then say, here are some parameters around what this service needs. And then you go and you configure like a number of different servers. You create a cluster, and then you say, here is this service to deploy. And then once you've done that, Service Fabric manages where it's deployed and how many instances of it, and it takes all of that away from you needing to manage it, and that makes your life a lot easier, obviously.
Exactly. And in addition to that, it can handle fault scenarios. So if a node were to go down, for example, it can redistribute those services for you automatically. It can also do in-place upgrades without any downtime, and it does it as a rolling upgrade. So when you go to deploy an application, it will deploy to the first node, and then it will execute the health checks and make sure that everything is working just right. And if it isn't, it can automatically roll it back. Awesome. So that's an auto-healing feature that's built into the platform as well.
Wow, that's great.
And the way it does that is because it uses the concept of upgrade domains as well as fault domains.
Yep.
And if that terminology sounds familiar, it's because if you've been working in Microsoft Azure before with storage or VMs, you know all about vault domains and upgrade domains. Well, guess what? Microsoft Azure is actually built on Service Fabric.
Which is amazing. So it means this isn't, while it's a newish product that's available for us to use, it's been used under the scenes of Azure for ages.
Exactly. So Azure SQL Database, Event Hubs, Skype for Business, all of those products and services that we know of are actually underpinned by Service Fabric.
So it's really battle hardened.
That's
like
right.
More than any other real service. If you're going out rather than going to try and create your own microservices architecture, why not use one that's powering millions and millions of users already?
It's already been proven, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess that really comes back to how reliable really, so obviously that says it's going to be really reliable. What's your experience with the reliability?
Well, it's interesting. If you think about an enterprise application where it's actually absolutely mission critical that it's up all the time, right?
Yep.
So you might deploy that application to a data center, say in the cloud. We can easily imagine a geological event that might take down that data center, right? A power outage in Sydney or something. Yep. So for our customers, normally we would encourage them in that case to deploy to multiple data centers. But what happens if that provider actually goes down? Now, that doesn't happen very often, but we know it has, right? AWS a few weeks ago.
3 hours.
And not that long ago, Microsoft Azure went down, too. I think it was the leap year bug that caused it to go out. So with the great thing about a cluster is because you can deploy these machines anywhere that you can connect them via a network or a virtual network, you can actually span multiple cloud providers. And in fact, my colleagues at Mexia have written an excellent blog article on how to do just that. I
actually read that, and I think we're actually going to keep a whole section, a whole show just for talking about how about the options around this and how you can go about it. But it really is a compelling argument, isn't it, to say, even if one whole provider goes down, your application can still stay up. And for some people, that might seem like overkill. But for a lot of people, the idea of their application being down for 3 hours is unthinkable.
They could be losing millions of dollars.
Absolutely. So if that is your scenario, this is one of the few options I've seen that are, reasonably, I'm not going to say trivially, but, it's not incredibly complex to actually create provider independent safety.
That's right.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we've talked about what Service Fabric is and what what microservices are. So tell me, what is Service Fabric not?
Well, that's a good question. I think the determination whether one should move to Service Fabric or not is based on probably a few things. If your organization is already building microservice-based architectures, then obviously Service Fabric is an excellent solution for you for hosting that. It just takes all of the hard work out of DevOps, right? Yep. But another reason for it might be the scenario where I was talking about earlier, where your systems are mission critical. You need to have it running all the time, and you need to do incremental deployments with no downtime. Service Fabric is excellent for handling that. But in terms of what it's not, it is not, while we said it was PaaS for DevOps, it is not PaaS for development, right? You actually have to write all the code for those services yourself. Now, obviously, the SDK that comes with it gives you, the Visual Studio projects and some sample code. You get a Service Fabric Explorer and all of that to manage it. But actually building the microservices themselves, that's your job to do that. So if you try to compare it to something like, say, Azure Logic Apps, for example, where you have connectors that are built to come out of the box and you don't have to code those, you just configure them, it's not going to be like that. So you need to be prepared for that.
So it's interesting because Service Fabric it's like a hybrid between PaaS and IaaS.
A little
because
bit.
It's, you need to have a certain number of servers and you go and configure a cluster. So there is some infrastructure configuration involved.
Yes, there is. And that's true. It does. Right now with Service Fabric, you actually do have to manage those individual servers and nodes. However, watch this space.
Yeah.
Because I know that the Service Fabric team is busy trying to make this product even more PaaS-like, the way cloud services, the legacy cloud services were, where you didn't have to worry about patching the machines. I would not be surprised at all if further down the line they're going to come out with some more PaaS-like features.
Wow, that would be exciting, because I know a lot of development teams are moving away from needing infrastructure, and they're moving into
serverless.
They're moving into serverless, and it's kind of, I know it's a bit of a blocker for some people, kind of going now moving back into managing servers, and so while you might need to maintain a bit of a cluster at the moment, that story is getting easier and easier and easier. Awesome. So really, in summary then, who should be looking at Service Fabric?
So, as we mentioned earlier, anybody who's currently using microservices for their application architecture definitely should be looking at it. And for organizations that maybe have heterogeneous applications where they have components that are built in all different technologies, maybe have to reside on different servers or even in different locations where some of it might be on-prem, some of it might be in the cloud. Again, as long as you can connect your cluster with a network or a virtual network, Service Fabric can run across all of those servers and keep your application highly available.
Awesome. Look, that's a great introduction and a great overview of Service Fabric. Dan, thank you very much for coming along and joining us today.
Thanks, Adam.
And thank you for watching SSW TV.